Good morning, my loves. How are you today? I am well. I'm doing good. See, we're going to have to look at that. My poor little dog, she loves to get in my face in the mornings, and her little claws get me. So if you see that, that's what that is. No harm, no foul, to be gone by the end of the day. My skin just gets really sensitive and shows things like that. So anyways, today I am here for The Evil Lives Here Season 1, Episode 5. This is called In Love with the Devil. Got a couple trigger warnings. There is a domestic abuse in this, the wife and the children, and then there's also animal abuse. So if you don't want to hear this, or it will affect you in any way that's negative, please feel free to click out, and I hope to see you in another video. So we're going to just jump in. We're just going to jump in and do our video today. So hang on tight. We will go. Okay, as always, anything that I am using, I will link down below. Bowie says he's ready. Are you? We're going to get started. And hopefully he stops that. So, okay, this episode starts, like I said, each episode starts a little different. And this one starts with, you see the crew and production team, and they're behind this lady that's going to be the pivotal person that's telling us her journey. We don't know her name yet, but I gotta see the mirror. Yeah. They're miking her up and getting her ready to speak. So then she starts the episode, and it's actually really clever that they start like this, because it's like an attention grabber. So they want to grab your attention and make sure you're paying attention. And why is that beating up? Make sure they grab your attention and hold you throughout the episode. So that's what it does, because she tells us that one night she was awakened by her husband. So we know the husband's the culprit here, which, like I said before, we get, you see that? Why is it doing that? I think I got it cleaned up. So I was using my primer, and it's a primer I use often. I really like it, and it was a really good thing that my makeup roulette picked it, because it's an orange primer, color correcting primer, but I don't think it really covered that much, so I might put a little something else on it. But anyways, it started beading on my skin, which is very odd. I've used that before, never had that problem. So I'm thinking it's a reaction to the new serum I used on my face, which is very unfortunate, because I bought a big bottle of this serum. And hopefully it's just that particular primer that's going to bead up, and not all of them. So, anyways, back to the show. So, so she says she woke up one night with her husband holding a shotgun to her face. This is getting crazy. Screaming. So anyways, sorry, this has been a really great start to this video, hasn't it? And of course we want to do this side just to match it. Okay, she's woke up one night, in the middle of the night, with a shotgun to her head. Her husband's holding it, and he's telling her, he said he murdered a woman last night. He stabbed her to death. And the lady says she had no doubt what he was saying was true. So that kind of leads up to where we're going in the story. Okay. And then we're probably going to go into, and I know I say probably, but we're going to go into the backstory of this couple. And first thing we get is a little pop-up that tells us Bernadette Hyde, which is this lady's name, spent 14 years married to a man who terrified her. So we know Bernadette is now the speaker. We know the man, her husband, we knew that. And we don't know his name yet. So it shows pictures of her and her husband. And she says, you know, she was so tempted to tell somebody after he told her he killed that woman. Said, but she knew if she did, he would kill them. And at this point, it doesn't specify, but I will say at this point, there were children as well. There was a boy and a girl that they had. So they've been married for a while. They had 2 kids. Now, I sit there and said we're going to go into the background of this couple, but I actually think I got a little ahead of myself because now we see footage of the actual interview. Oh, not interview, interrogation. That's a little different than an interview, isn't it? But I think my brush was shedding. Okay, so we see the actual interrogation footage. It shows 2 gentlemen. None of them are actually introduced, but you see 2 gentlemen, which you assume are the cops, and then the one guy in a orange suit, you know, the one of those jail jumpsuits. And one of them is talking, the other one's holding what looks like a recorder. It's actually kind of weird because normally, and later on, we will see footage of them around a table, but right now they're not sitting around a table. Right now, they are got the 3 chairs just kind of sitting around in these chairs looking at each other. Just like I said, it's kind of odd, I guess, maybe for my perception. But yeah, that's what it is. So they're all sitting around the circle. The guy in the jumpsuit looks very relaxed, very nonchalant. He don't care. The other guy's talking, and he's saying things like, and I'm paraphrasing this, that the world is a fantastic place. The majority of the world is a great place with fun, respectful, loving people. He says 99% were that. And then he said there's the 1% like you that are evil. Wow. Okay. So we're getting right into it. I mean, we don't know much about what's going on, but this cop is telling Mr. Jumpsuit Guy that he's evil. I found that a little odd. Maybe not. Maybe just me. I don't know. But we get the idea right away that this dude's a pretty awful person. And because you don't usually hear detectives or cops saying things like that. Typically what we hear is, sorry, I'm going to adjust you again. I wish she hadn't cut me. What we typically hear is them trying to be friends and buddies to get the information on the case. But that's not the case here. This guy is completely like, no, you're evil. You are 100% evil. So he says, now you see the guy in the jumpsuit. He's just unfazed. He takes his glasses off. He looks at them. He puts them back on. And, you know, really, he tries to tell him, he says, I'm not evil. And the guy, the speaker says, and this I quote, you are evil, end quote. So now, because like I've said before, there is no narrator. Everything you see or hear in the show is from the actual person telling the story, except for some pop-up information that I guess takes place instead of a narrator. So the pop-up is telling us that in May 2011, Brian Segram was arrested for an 8-year-old crime he thought he got away with. Okay, so we know the guy's name's Brian. Can't pronounce his last name, and I apologize. When you hear that, there was an 8-year-old crime that he got away with before, you know, that he was getting away with. I automatically wonder, did this wife, and you later find out yes, but I was like, oh my gosh, did this wife live knowing that he killed someone for 8 years? I don't know. So I'm not going to play the blame game with the wife. There is a lot of questionable stuff that goes on that I learn throughout, or that we will learn throughout this episode. And then when we go to Mr. Google and he starts telling us his fun facts. But I will not blame the wife. I do not know. I've not been in her situation, but I will say I did, raise my eyebrows a few times, but we'll leave it at that. So now Bernadette's back on, and she says that you just wake up one day and realize you're living in a nightmare and you don't know how to get out. So now we see pictures. They show a lot of pictures of Brian and Bernadette. So these pictures, she shows up as they're talking. You can tell they're young, like probably 15, 16 when they met. We find out later. It doesn't tell us really how old Brian is, but you get the feeling he might be a year or two older than Bernadette. She said, most people don't understand how you can stay with someone like that. I am one of those people. I won't lie, but it's not my truth, so I don't know. She says, quote, she loved him, and she really believed he loved her, end quote. So I take that as she really thought love was enough to keep them together or to work through whatever problem they were having. So she said at one time, Brian had been a loving husband and father until he wasn't. So, I'm sorry, I'm like paying more attention to this than makeup. We'll get to it. So she says she was 16 years old the summer she met Brian. And she went to her cousin's house to pick him up, and they were going to go, try to make sure I don't draw attention to this, that I color corrected, right? They were going to go swimming. This summer, they did this a lot. And she said when she's at her cousin's house, this guy walks out of the woods behind them. So it's like a subdivision, I guess. It's kind of what I get with the picture. And Brian lived a couple doors down, and he came out. I don't know why he came out from behind the house if he lived a couple doors down, but that's what she said. And I don't have a drawing or a picture of the neighborhood to give me any clear indication of how that worked. So we're just going to take her for her word on that. Oh, sorry. So she had never met him. Her cousin knew him. Obviously, they were neighbors. But she said she was instantly curious about him. She said that was the first time they met. So then you see more pictures of Bernadette and Brian in their young phase. And Bernadette says, these pictures are just two kids falling in love. I get that. She said, happier times. She said, Bernadette says he was the first guy that ever truly showed her any attention or affection. And, to me, again, she's the perfect vulnerable. She's vulnerable. I don't want to say perfect. There's no real perfect victim because they come in all shapes and sizes. And confident, not confident, big family, little family. I mean, there's really no definition of what makes a good victim. It's just the person that does it is the perfect criminal. Yeah, and that's what I'm going to stick with. So she said, no, she had never really had a guy pay attention to her before, and he was the first one that really did, and she fell hard. She said she was also from a large family. There was 6 of them. She said her mom and dad loved her. She said there was never any doubt of love from mom and dad or even the siblings. She said they all got along really well. She said, but with 6, it's just hard to find that individual time that kids need with their parents. Like, I had 2 kids, and my husband and I have 2 kids. I don't had 2 kids. I have 2 kids, and it's it's a juggling thing, especially when they're in stuff like sports. Both of my kids were very active, or still are in a lot of ways, and So I get it. I mean, she's not saying anything bad about her family. She's just like, this is the way it was. There's just a lot of us. And my parents did the best they could. So the individual attention, though, did not come around often. And when she started getting it from Brian, she was just like lapping it up. She just couldn't help herself. She said, and they became inseparable. She said, what is it? She didn't care about anything else or anyone else. It was just Brian. Brian. She wanted to be around him. She wanted to make him happy. He made her happy. There was no one else for them. She wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. And she knew at that early age that she did. So, all right. I mean, I met my husband young. I wasn't 16. I was 17. So, and I pretty much knew from that moment, not the very first moment I met him, but after we started dating and I got to know him, I knew he was going to be the one for me. And I can't sit there and tell her or say that I don't believe that, because I do know that that can happen. That you can find the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, and at a young age. My son did. He's been with the same girl since he was 13. And yes, it's a little young, even for, I mean, especially, I was very, I won't say against it because I really like Michaela. But when they were 13, I was just like, guys, you are way too young for this. So they broke up for a little while. And then got back together when they were 16, 17, something like that. And been together since. And, you know, my son is 28. He knew. They knew. And I can't say that it doesn't happen. It does. I digress. She said, one day they were out walking, and he kind of became frantic. And he said he had something really terrible he needed to tell her. Now, this is early on. They're still dating, you know, so on and so forth. And she's like, okay, what happened? What's going on? You know, what is it? And he said that he told her then. This is when she was 16-ish. Yeah, 16, 17. They were just dating. But he had told her that he killed somebody. And he never gave her, or if she did, okay, I'm going to say they never gave us any facts, or not facts, but details about who he supposedly killed. But he's confessing to have murdered somebody. And she's laughing it off. She says, come on, seriously, you could never harm anybody. You know, quit playing this joke. This isn't funny, and so on and so forth. And he's trying to tell her. He says, you know, I'm not a good person. And she says, yes, you are. I would not be with you if you were not a good person. I don't know. Again, wearing black in my house just sucks. Some of my favorite shirts are black. But I digress. I do that a lot. I get on these tangents. He's like, well, I hope you're right. She says, of course I am. I would never love you if you were a bad person. She says, you're a good guy and whatever. So literally that's the end of that. So it obviously will come up later. But it doesn't come back up in the Evil Lives Here episode. It's kind of weird. They literally never talk about it again. But when I Google, I find some interesting stuff. So anyways, she never believed he was capable of doing something like that, and convinced herself that he was being dramatic, whatever. The police did come around and talk to him. Again, it doesn't say how he was narrowed down or what, which I will tell you later. But the police did talk to him, give him a lie detector test, but nothing was ever done with it about it. So I guess he passed the test. I guess they thought maybe, I don't know. Again, it doesn't really tell us in the Evil Lives Here episodes what went on. So, Bernadette is still talking about it, and she's like, I never saw him as a bad person. I guess until, you know, they've been married 100 years. But he just was someone she loved. You know, he was the man that she loved and wanted to spend the rest of her life with. So, when Brian asked her to marry him, she said yes, absolutely. It's what she wanted. It's who she wanted. It's how she wanted. It's the whole kebab. She said she wanted the whole kebab. Like I said, she wanted the marriage, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids, and the dog. You know, she said it was the happiest she had ever been. And when they got that, you know, the 2 kids and the dog, she said it was the happiest she had ever seen him. Okay. He was apparently a good dad. He spent a lot of time with his children, playing with them in the backyard or do whatever, you know. She said, okay, she says, and then things changed, but seriously, we wouldn't be here if things didn't change, right? I mean, it's a sad fact. But she said he would start getting angry. And she had never, or okay, so she alludes to that she had never seen his temper until these times when he would start getting angry. And she said it was like a switch. He would click on and off, you know. You never knew what would set him off and why he would start being mad. She said it was during this time that she started seeing the dark side of her husband. Okay. She said, looking back now, she said it's easy to see things clearly. Of course, they, you know, that whole saying, what is it? Ha! Bam, like for something sites 2020. Anyways, you get what I'm saying. Yes, it's so much easier to see it now looking back than you did in the moment. It's just kind of how it goes. So, where am I at? Oh, okay. She said, looking back now, she says she clearly sees that there was problems, and she doesn't know why she didn't run, why she didn't leave, why she didn't do whatever. But she said at the moment she couldn't see anything other than the fact that she loved him, and she never really saw his red flags and warning signs. She just loved this guy more than anything in the world, including her kids. So after they were married, Brian expected Bernadette to live up to his extremely high standards of what a wife should be. You had to be intelligent. You had to use the right responses, the correct grammar, and vocabulary. I mean, so he was really not so much what you usually see in these stories where they expect you to be the perfect what am I trying to say? Housewife and the perfect, you know, that kind of thing. No, he wanted the perfect illusion. She said one time she was on the phone. She doesn't say with who. It doesn't really matter. But apparently she answered the phone wrong. I don't know how you answer the phone wrong. Hello? Yeah, that's pretty much. Or, this is Erin. How can I help you? Pretty much how I answer every call I make. Or I receive. But so when she failed to meet his expectations, he got extremely angry. No kidding. We knew that was going to happen, right? It was leading right up to it. But, okay. So she answered the phone wrong, and he got very angry with her, telling her he wanted her to take her. Okay, so he told her this because she answered the phone wrong. He wanted to take her and bash her head against the wall and watch the blood drip down, run down the wall. He was yelling and carrying on. He said he didn't care if the neighbors heard him. He said that let them call the cops, because she better never disrespect him again by answering this phone wrong. He said next time he won't be so nice. And she said, then he gave her a kiss and walked off like no big deal, nothing happened, and she let him. Okay, next. So after that incident, so I guess that was like it's the first big incident she's telling us about, right? He would break into a rage a lot more. And she said at this point, he wasn't angry. He broke into rages. You know, he was just maniacal about some things. And she said sometimes it can be as simple as the floor being dirty or a fingerprint on the television. Now remember, 2 kids. Mama works full time. I'm assuming Daddy works full time. I have no idea what Brian does. It never states. And I should have looked that up because that is curious. But no, they had 2 kids, but there was a fingerprint on the television. God. Okay, sorry, but that one like blew me away because I'm like, God help you come to my house with 4 dogs that shed, and I work full time and my husband works full time, and you know, we keep a decent house, but there are some times where we have tumbleweeds coming through, or, you know, and dust is a friend of ours. I am not a dirty person. I am a busy person, and so is my husband. So, anyways, but she said he would start lecturing. He'd do these lectures when things weren't how he wanted them, and he would lecture for like 2 to 3 hours at a time. She said, and they had to sit there and take it. Said they weren't allowed to say anything. They weren't allowed to dispute anything. They just had to let him rant. And it became an every other night type of situation where he had these rants, and he would just lay into them. And it's not just the wife, but the kids too. I mean, I don't know how old these kids were, but they were young. Because I think when everything broke down and fell apart for them, the daughter was 11. So this was before. She said every day was like walking around on eggshells. And her anxiety was so bad she couldn't eat. She couldn't look at him. Or no, she couldn't eat. She couldn't, you know, she wasn't happy. And she said she could just look at him and tell if he was going to have a mood that day, and would be able to tell if it was going to be a good day or a bad day. So now she's telling us that I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, sorry. So now she's telling us that Mondays he designated as training days. Okay, little odd, but no big deal. But she said, and it wasn't just her. He did the kids, he did everybody. They had to go through these training, and they're usually about 3 hours long. And she said at first they all had fun with it. She said it was training, they would train, let's see, boxing, hand-to-hand combat, knives, guns, you know. And she said she looked at it as self-defense and able to take care of yourself and that kind of stuff, and really had no problem with it because, you know, she was learning that, and they were teaching their kids the same. And I get it. I mean, I do. I don't have a problem with that statement or sentiment. And I know this will be a regional thing. I really do. Where I'm from, kids have guns, they hunt, they know how to shoot. It's very well trained. They know how to use knives because they know how to field their kill and, you know, that kind of stuff. I think anybody learning basic self-defense in martial arts or boxing, I loved to box when I was younger, spar. So I don't really have a problem with that, and I'm sorry. I'm sure some of you do, and I get that. Like I said, it's going to be a regional thing. Anyways. So, but they quit being fun. He started taking it very, very, very serious, and so much so that, say, what was it? Once it became a forced thing, when he forced it and it wasn't fun anymore, it was mandatory every Monday night, 3 hours long, and he would hit them as hard as he could. And right then, he's just hitting the wife, and then the kids had to fight each other. And he wouldn't let the kids pull their punches either. He would tell them, said, you hit each other or I will hit you. So the kids literally had to, my legs against this, it's going to start shaking, had to fight each other and had to do it full out. She said during this time, during this time when she's talking, there's actual photos of these kids sparring and fighting each other and him fighting her, and I had questions. So most of these pictures show they're all in the proper headgear and stuff, which is great, okay? Who's taking the pictures? So the pictures of Brian and Bernadette sparring and fighting, who's taking that? Are the kids taking them? And then there's pictures of the kids fighting each other and hitting each other. And I have to assume one of the two parents are taking those pictures, right? I'm so confused. Who would take those pictures? Especially when it quit being a fun thing. So when it was a fun family affair, maybe, you know, maybe they would have taken those pictures. Maybe they wouldn't have thought anything about it. But when it became a forced thing, when it became not fun and you started fearing for yourself that you were going to take a beat down, why are you recording it? Okay, so one picture shows Brian hitting Bernadette, and she's got bruises already all over her arms. So it was serious. It had become a serious affair. So then Bernadette goes into another story where Brian had bought, she says them, so I don't know if he had bought the kids cell phones too. I don't know, but he had bought cell phones. And she said she had never really had a cell phone. So it isn't like we are now where our cell phones are always within reach and accessible either by a watch, which I don't have my watch. So usually when I get something in my hand, you know, when I get something that comes through my watch, you know, it wasn't that. And she had never had one before, so she just didn't think to keep it on her all the time. I get that. I remember when I first had myself. My daughter's this way. Okay, I'm not even going to say me so much as my daughter. She is the worst. She puts her phone down, has no idea where she put it, and we have to go searching. And let me just tell you, my daughter's 22. She's 24. Oh my God, my daughter's 24. And I'm going to take a second. Oh my God. First I got that wrong. I can't believe I was just like, oh yeah, she's 22. But she's 24. Okay. Yeah, my son's 28. Process this, Aaron. Whew. I don't even know when I was talking about him earlier. Did I even say his age right? I don't know. Anyway, so she didn't keep her phone on her. She kept it in her purse. And one day he went and he was trying to call her and trying to call her and trying to call her. And she didn't hear it, so she didn't answer it. So when he came home, he was furious. And that was the first time she took a real beating from him. And I say a real beating because before at least they had on gear and pads and stuff. And this time, no, he's choking her up against the wall. He's pounding on her head, kicking her feet. Yeah, that was the first really violent beating. And after it was said and done, when she's laying on the floor bleeding and crying, he's telling her, what is it? Okay, so let me just go back to my notes. That was the first time he had savagely beat her. Before, when he hit her, they were sparring and had on protection gear. He ranted at her about messing things up, and she wasn't what he wanted her to be. She needed to start living up to his standards and expectations, or he would kill her. Nice. He kept telling her he could easily kill her and make it look like an accident. He knows where to bury her. So after the beating, when she's on the floor bleeding and crying, he tells her he loved her so much that they could get past this, that she needed to change. If she just changed a few things, that would never happen again. He did ask for her forgiveness, and she forgave him. She said for the longest time she lived with the belief that he would never kill her because he actually loved her. But now we know she's not dead because she's doing this. But that thought would keep her safe in her mind. That, yeah, he might beat on me, he might do this, that, but he'd never go too far. But he goes too far. He goes too far. Okay, so now we're circling back to the night of the shotgun story, right? When we first got into this story, and trying to think of what I want to do. Where she's telling us that he wakes her up with a shotgun in his face, or in her face, and so on and so forth. So she's saying he woke her up and he was calling her names, and he called her names a lot, and they bleeped out so much that I'm not even gonna. He just cussed at her. He called her names, whatever, and he was telling her to get out of bed. Get out of bed right then with the shotgun in your face. Get out of bed, or he would kill her. He said he didn't care. He'll kill her right there. Just get out of bed. And he was waving the shotgun. They went to the dining room, okay? And she's sitting at the kitchen table. And he's just pacing. At least, she's telling this, and the reenactment's doing it too. So a lot of times your reenactment does something different than what the person's saying. This is not going to work for me. This time they're matching. And where is it at? So he goes into a speech about all the stuff that she wasn't doing right. So he tells her he's killed somebody, but then he's lecturing her about what she hasn't done right. And she had no idea, what was going on. So apparently he told her he killed somebody, woke her up, but then started to proceed to tell her that she was an awful wife and she wasn't doing her job, and things were, were going to change, or, he was going to make a change, and I don't know. It's just, how do you understand a crazy person, right? Do you ever truly understand where a crazy person's coming from? So she said that night, this is so funny because at the beginning of the episode, and I'm just catching this. Why didn't I catch this before when I heard it twice? But at the beginning of the episode, she's saying when he put the gun in her face, he told her that he killed somebody. But when we're back to the story, it never talks about him killing anybody. So we're just going to go on and just do this story as she is. So he woke her up in the middle of the night with a shotgun in her face and takes her to the kitchen table, sits her down, starts yelling and cussing, telling her how awful she is and how she has to change, things were going to change, and it was all her fault, and all that, okay? And she says, in this moment, I was truly scared for my life for the very first time. So this coming after she was saying she didn't think he would actually kill her because he loved her. So now she is actually terrified, right? So she said, where am I at? The next day, he apologized to her. He told her he was sorry, that he loved her, didn't mean to scare her like that she was the best thing that ever happened to him, and asked her to forgive him. She does, again. But she says it just got worse from there. Well, hello. Yeah. Okay. So then she says, this really broke me. I won't say broke me. I mean, up until this point, I'm not even going to finish that. This is a very hard part of the story. So she said they had a dog. And there are a ton of pictures of her and this dog, cute little dog, like a little, let's say like some kind of French bulldog type of thing. I love dogs. I don't know much about their breeds other than the breeds I have at the time or have had, you know. So if I've owned one, I know about it. Or if I currently own one, I know about it. Otherwise, I can tell you what I think. And it doesn't say much. She said his name. I don't remember what his name was. She told us at one point what his name was. I'm having so much trouble getting this to blend. And I really like this palette. I don't use it often, but come on. Work with me here. So she said this dog one day ran out of the yard. As dogs are wont to do. I can't even tell you how many dogs I've had that have ran out of the yard and freedom, and they're gone, and you know, off to the chase. I had one that Cocker Spaniel, loved this dog, and it became a game to him. He'd get out of the house and the whole neighborhood would chase him. The whole neighborhood would. All the kids, you know, my husband, all of us would. And he would run to the same place. I mean, we knew where he was going. He was going to go to the train. There was a train. There was a trestle that you had to go up to get to the train, so it wasn't on the road. So it was a bridge. It was a train bridge. And he'd run to that bridge every time. And he'd stop and he'd wait for him. But it was a game, and, you know, it's what dogs do. However, that day when the dog ran, Brian took said dog to the backyard with Bernadette and her 2 kids and shot the dog in the head for running. And he told his family, that's what happens when you do not, so that's what happens when you don't obey the rules or listen to orders, something like that. She said Bernadette said they couldn't do anything. They couldn't say anything. Even the kids knew not to say anything because it would set him off. She said her kids were scared. She said she was sitting there because the dog was so close to her when he got shot. She had blood splatter on her legs. Oh no, Brian said that's what happened when you can't follow directions. So, yeah, in front of your kids. Okay. And moving on. So, okay, so this is where I might have been getting my stories confused, because she said in 2003, Bernadette woke up in the middle of the night. Brian woke Bernadette up in the middle of the night for the second time. So this must be where the 2 stories converged. And I think, honestly, that they did that on purpose because they wanted you to be in the story. Anyways, so she said Brian had been out all night, and I'm not going to be able to do this when I read this. He had been out all night, and when he came home, he woke her up and said he had something important to tell her. And she said, you know, it's like deja vu from when they were dating, and he did the same thing. He had something important to tell her. He needed her to know whatever, right? So he proceeds to tell her he had killed someone while, that he had killed someone again. And basically he's like, I did it again. This time she didn't doubt it. But he told her he had murdered a woman last night, that he had stabbed her to death. she had no doubt that he actually did what he was saying, and that he wouldn't think twice about killing her at this point. Now she is past the point where she thinks she's safe because he won't, because he loves her, right? Now she's like, nope, this dude is crazy. So she knew and had no doubt what happened. So he went on and was telling her about it, and then he told her, he said, this is what you're going to do. So she had to take him to the bus station and drop him off. Then if anybody asked where he was, they were in a trial separation. Okay, so she did all that. And he told her, you cannot tell anyone, or I'll kill you, I'll kill your family, whatever. You know, come on, we knew that was going to happen, right? So she said, she did all that. And she said, and she saw on the news this woman murdered that they found, and no leads, and somebody knows something and they're trying to find out who it was. She said, and she stayed quiet. She said, yes, I considered going to the police while he was out of the house. She said, but when he left her house, he moved in with her cousin to stay. Don't know why, don't really understand that. But so he went and moved in with her cousin, and she knew that if she called the cops, he would kill them to get back at her. So she didn't. She didn't say anything. And she said he was gone about a month. And she doesn't specify this, but I've got to say that month had to have been a really nice month for them. It really did. It had to have been quiet and peaceful, and those poor kids probably for the first time able to breathe. She doesn't say that, but that's just mine. So he stayed away for the month, and there was no suspicion on him at all. Like, his name was never mentioned in anything. He was never suspected for it by the cops, whatever. So eventually he came home. And she said when he just walked home one day, or come home one day with no warning, she said nothing was the same after. She said, you know, then she's talking and she says, you know, fear is the most powerful thing in the world. Fear can make you paralyzed. Yes, we all know that. I have not been feared to that, I have not had fear to that point, but I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't believe that kind of fear is real. It is. She said, where's that? She had considered packing up the kids and leaving numerous times, but she was afraid of what he would do and the repercussions. Plus, you know, he was still their kid's dad, and he would probably still get visitation because she had never reported anything. Nobody knew any of the stuff that was going on. So she was like, what do I do? So one time she went to him and she told him, she's like, I want out. I can't do this anymore. I love you, but I'm not in love with you. She tried, I guess. You know, she did. I don't understand why she didn't just leave. But again, it's not me. It's not my truth. This is hers. So she went to him. I guess she tried to do the right thing. And she said he was very angry. Which I could probably just not even tell you that. We all know who's going to be very angry. But she said he... it doesn't say he hit her or anything, but he did probably what was worse. He told her that he killed that woman because of her. That this woman he killed reminded him of Bernadette. And he couldn't kill the mother of his children, so he killed this woman. But now the children didn't need her, and if she tried to leave him, he would kill her. Okay. She left. I mean, she stayed. Obviously, she didn't try to leave again. She believed him. I would have believed him. You know, that's why I don't think I would have told him. But, you know, she stayed. So now, I've got, I'm not done with makeup, but I'm close. But I'm at this point of the story where I'm trying to truly understand what her thought process was. So, Brian wanted a gun. Okay, this dude had just threatened to kill you if you tried to leave, and now he wants a gun, and she goes and gets it for him. Okay, so in, where are they at? Michigan. Okay, so this is the first time they tell us what state they're in, but in Michigan, when you buy a gun, you have to take it to the sheriff's office to get it registered. She does. So she's by herself in the sheriff's office. She can tell her truth. She doesn't. She said, and on the table that she's sitting at with this sheriff, there is a poster of this dead woman, and the posters they put out in the, if you have information, please call blah blah blah, whatever. One of those was sitting next to her, and she was looking at it. She said, I picked it up, I looked at it. She said, I wanted to say something, but I didn't. Okay. Again, that's okay. So she said she registered the gun. She brought it back for Brian. So they had it, She said there was one day he was in the shower, and she said, I seriously considered shooting him. She said it was the perfect opportunity. I could have grabbed the gun, could have walked in while he was unexpected, and shoot him. She said then she started thinking. She said first, I couldn't do it. So I don't know if she just couldn't pull the trigger and actually kill somebody, or if she couldn't do it because then she said my kids would be, their mom killed their dad, and I would be in jail, so then they wouldn't have a mom or a dad. Okay. I have nothing to disagree or to say about that. But she fantasized about shooting him often. Come on, I get it. So now we're going to get into, because the next thing she says, one day things just spiraled out of control. And we're going to get into that because that's really going to be the beginning of the end for Mr. Brian. So she said she come home from work one day. It was a Monday. It was a training day. And she said he was in the garage sparring their son. So the daughter was not fighting the son, the dad was. She said she can see her daughter, and she said their names. I've kept their names purposely out of the story, but she said she could see the daughter cowering up against like the side of the wall, crying. She said she knew something bad had happened, right? All right. Forgot to get the glue for my lashes. So she said she jumped out of the car and ran to her daughter to find out what happened. She said as she's talking to him, or to her, she said Brian stepped in between them, told her it was none of her concern. You know what? I am going to say this. I've really tried to, I've not done a great job, but I've really tried to keep my opinions out of that. But if anybody told me the welfare of my children were not my concern, even my kids, if they told me that, I would fight bloody hell over that. Hell to the no. My kids' welfare is always my concern, and I will always be involved and step in when needed. So yeah, he tells her that it is none of her concern. I struggle with this, so she said then he started sparring again, and he was sparring the son. So when that stopped, he took a baton. He had a, what kind of baton was it? It was a baton stick he used for karate. And when, between sparring session, he would go and beat the living hell out of the daughter on her back. And the reenactment video showed she had no gear on, no head protection, nothing. So I'm assuming that was the truth. I don't know. But then she sat there and watched while that happened. And then when it was her turn, she started sparring with Brian. And then when he quit, he'd go and beat the daughter again. So this just kept going on and on. She said, Bernadette said, she could look over and her mom or her daughter was yelling, "Mommy, please help." Not yelling, but she was mouthing, "Mommy, please help me." And she did nothing. So she said 2, 3 times, maybe 4 times this happened. And she said, Bernadette said she was sparring Brian and she saw out of the corner of her eye her daughter take a run for it. So she ran and she ran and she didn't stop till she was at a neighbor's. And Bernadette said, she did what I couldn't do. Okay. So, next thing she says, you hear the police coming, sirens. And they all knew. She said, Brian knew what it was all about. But he's a cocky motherfucker. And I apologize for the language up front. So she said the cops showed up and they're asking, is everything okay? Do you know where your daughter's at? You know, what's going on? You know, your daughter called the cops, blah, blah, blah. And Bernadette said, you know, she was faced with the knowledge that Brian could sweet talk his way out of this. She knew that that's what he was going to try to do. And he's telling them, you know, everything's okay. And yeah, they were just sparring and their daughter just got a little angry, blah, blah, blah. And Bernadette said, I wasn't saying anything. She said, I didn't say anything for the longest time. And she said the cops turned to leave. And she knew this was it. This was her time. She had to do something because when the cops left and because the daughter called the cops on him, she said, I knew he would kill us all. So she stopped him and told him, yes, I need to tell you, he's told me he's killed somebody, and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, she starts telling her truth, and the cops take him away and arrest him. But, you know, obviously the nightmare is far from over, because they got him, and they got him on what she has said. You know, he confessed to her that he killed somebody. And, but they needed proof. You can't just, you know, they had to have some kind of proof. So very apparently, and it never says what, they did get some proof, and then Bernadette was going to have to see him in court again. Or she was going to have to face him again in court. And she was to testify against him. And there actually is footage of this, where she is testifying how he woke her up with a gun and what he confessed and so on and so forth. So you actually get to watch her on the stand talking about that. And I want to say, I really do like this show for that purpose, right? You just get to see some of this stuff, and right, wrong, or indifferent, it's definitely interesting. So, she said And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like chuckle for anything. It's just, it's hard, very hard. So she said, you know, she called the cops, or no, she testified, but she was terrified that he was going to get off, that the jury would let him out, and that she knew if that happened, he was coming after her. Without a doubt, she knew he would come after her and her family, or her kids. And I totally skipped over the actual interview footage again, where after he's arrested and the cops talking to him. And I didn't mean to. I just kind of got into my story. But, you know, they're talking to him and trying to get him to confess, and he's playing innocent. You want me to confess to something I didn't do, and yada, yada, yada. And detectives are like, no, we want the truth. We want to know, did you do this? This is what we're told. This is blah, blah, blah. And so they go back and forth. But in the end, you know, she's talking. She's afraid that if they do convict him in 10 years, he'll be out. And she knows that she's still in danger, yada, yada. So after the pictures of the trial and everything, and her testimony at the trial, it pretty much ends. It doesn't really tell us. I just realized that. It doesn't really tell us what he was convicted of. I hope I have that information. Okay, so I don't have it wrote, but I do know he was convicted for life in prison for the murder of, I do have her name. What's her name? Linda K. Gibson. And so I Googled and I found a couple interesting things. For one, they are in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So, I mean, you don't find out even what state they're in until the end of the show. And it tells you Michigan. And now I had to look it up for them to tell me it was Kalamazoo. So I don't know much about Kalamazoo other than that's a pretty cool name. Here's what I want. So here's what I found out. Brian's full name is Besham Brian Sugren. He is of Asian descent, born in 1976. After the cops showed up when the daughter called, he was convicted of he was also convicted of beating his daughter. He received a 10-year sentence for that, and then life in prison for the murder. The victim's name was Linda K. Gibson, as I had just stated. She was a sex worker that was living on the street. I'm pretty sure she was living on the street, and he brutally, what was it he did? He brutally stabbed and beat her to death. And it was unsolved for 8 years. So Bernadette knew for 8 years that he had told her he killed this woman. Okay. I'm actually really liking that look. Hope you do too. So this is something that I'm not going to get much into, but I will mention the daughter also testified against her father for the savage beatings, and, you know, obviously she didn't have knowledge of the murder, but she could tell them about the savage beatings and so on and so forth, and probably had to do that when he was convicted of beating her. But, you know, he abused the son and her and the mother just as well. The son's not mentioned much, which I found interesting. And that, again, I am a true believer of letting the innocent go. Okay? The kids are so innocent in this. I don't feel like it is in anybody's best interest to come back and talk about them when they are healing and trying to move on. So let's just go ahead. The daughter testified how scared she was of her father and his behavior. She, there isn't much said about the son. I didn't look into the lives like I just said. Okay. There does seem to be footage of not only Bernadette's courtroom confession or courtroom interrogation or whatever, but the daughter seems to be too. I did not click on it. Okay, so it seems that Bernadette went on multiple talk shows. She kind of made the rounds. There's nothing wrong with that, but she kind of made the rounds. She probably, when this story came out, a lot of questions about her knowing for 8 years and not saying anything. So she was probably, I'm trying to hide Kipsy's little hickey she gave me. Probably really trying to clear her name. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That is probably what she is thinking. So she was on the Today Show, and it says, she said on the Today Show, and this is stuff that she didn't say on this episode, that Brian beat their children often and only beat her when she interfered or got in the way. It's not kind of how it sounded, and she was in the evil lives here, but okay, I get that too. There's also mention of violence from Brian when they were dating and signs that she had before she married him. That's also not mentioned, but she mentioned that in the Today Show. She chose to ignore his violent tendencies, including, this happened while they were dating, violence against her cousin. Now, this is the same cousin he went and lived with when he was afraid of being caught for the murder. So these are the things that I see that makes me question Bernadette. And I'm only going to say that once, and I'm going to lay these out and you have your own opinions. But here it is. And I haven't looked any of this up. Other than the Today Show information I received or looked at and read that gave me this information, I didn't dig further. So again, this is an Evil Lives Here episode, so I don't want to confuse it too much. But some of this I thought was important and needed to be mentioned. Okay. What I'm seeing, or what I'm hearing, is that Bernadette tried to help Brian pin a murder on Brian's father, which in fact he did. So apparently an elderly gentleman that was living with their father, or his father, and had AIDS, was murdered. And I have to think, going back, this is the murder he admitted to Bernadette when they were dating. And now I'm seeing, because the timeline makes sense. This was about when he was that age. And in here, it's saying she helped cover that up. So then it says, Bernadette watched Brian beat his foster mother into unconsciousness after she kicked the couple out of her home. So I don't know why she kicked them out, but she kicked them out. Brian was mad because Bernadette was pregnant and they had nowhere to go. She stood by while Brian repeatedly beat their children with a whip. And there was accusations that Brian was an illegal alien and she helped hide that. I saw a quote. Bernadette was asked how she could justify concealing all of this information. And she said, quote, "I learned not to let it eat away at me. I put it out of my mind. I couldn't survive if I thought about it all the time." End quote. Oh, so was Bernadette just as evil as Brian? What do you think? I definitely think she was accomplice to some of this stuff. She knew so much and didn't tell. I'm curious. Let me know what you think. I really am. I'd love to hear what you think about this. She said at one time that love made you do things you don't expect. And could she be using that as her excuse? Possibly. I mean, she's clearly saying that she loved the guy and it's made her do things she didn't expect she'd ever do, including covering up murder and beatings and hiding murder for 8 years. There was also a Dateline episode about her, which is funny because Dateline's one of the podcasts I listen to on a regular basis. And I have not heard it yet. I don't know if it pops up if I'll listen to it. I probably will because my curiosity is at an all-time high. But, yeah, she's done a lot of interviews, a lot of shows, a lot of trying to explain herself. And I'm thinking it could be because there's some questions of how involved in whatever she is. Anyways, that is the unfortunate story of the Evil Lives Here episode. I think I'm at 5. In love with the devil. And I'm excited to keep doing this. I want to hear from you. Let me know what you think, what you thought, and questions, concerns, any of that. But in the meantime, enjoy this beautiful day that Mother Nature has completely lost her mind. She's bipolar. April Fool's joke was not funny. So, anyways, I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.